You know, people often talk about arthritis as if it's some unavoidable punishment that comes with age, but that idea is completely misleading. Joint pain doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It's usually fueled by hidden triggers you're exposed to every single day. And here's the twist. Many of these triggers are disguised as healthy foods. If your knees burn, your fingers swell, or your hips stiffen, there's a reason behind it. And once you understand that reason, everything changes. Because the real problem isn't simply wear and tear like most people assume. It's what you're putting on your plate. Some foods ignite inflammation so aggressively that they can sabotage even the best treatments, from anti-inflammatory meds to physical therapy. If you've been trying everything and still waking up stiff, achy, and frustrated, it's not your fault. You were never told what's actually harming your joints. And yes, a few of these foods might even be in your kitchen right now. The good news? Once you remove the worst offenders, many people feel noticeable relief within as little as 48 hours. No magic tricks, just your body finally getting a break from what's irritating it. Today, I'm going to walk you through the 7 foods that are secretly making your arthritis worse, whether it's osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, or even gout. And more importantly, I'll show you what to eat instead so your joints can cool down, recover, and move freely again. Arthritis often feels like an unwanted guest that shows up at the worst moments, but what many people don't realize is how strongly it reacts to the food on their plate. Those 7 foods we'll uncover are some of the biggest culprits behind joint stiffness, swelling, and that draining discomfort that lingers for hours. Whether someone is dealing with osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, or even gout, the inflammatory response follows the same pattern. That's why nutrition, especially healthy keto and intermittent fasting, becomes such a reliable ally in calming the storm before it even starts. The fascinating part is how quickly the body shifts when you remove the wrong foods. Joints that once felt heavy and irritated start responding differently, almost as if they're finally catching a break. When people begin noticing how a cleaner diet reduces inflammation, it often becomes the turning point in their healing journey. It's not just about eating healthy. It's about giving your cells the environment they've been craving. And yes, once that connection clicks, it's very hard to go back to old habits. Old injuries, of course, add another layer to the story. A sprained ankle from years ago, repetitive strain at work, or even small traumas you barely remember can suddenly become hotspots for inflammation when the diet isn't supportive. The wrong foods amplify these weak points, making every movement feel heavier than it should. That's exactly why understanding what to avoid matters so much, because each choice either fuels inflammation or helps quiet it down. And as we move forward, this insight opens the door to the next essential piece. Arthritis may seem like a simple joint problem, but it's far more intricate than most people imagine. At the heart of each joint, you'll find chondrocytes, tiny but incredibly important cells responsible for maintaining your cartilage. Think of them as quiet custodians, constantly repairing and renewing the structure that allows your bones to glide smoothly. When the diet is poor or inflammation is high, these cells struggle, and that's when discomfort starts talking out louder. Healthy keto and intermittent fasting help lighten that burden, giving these cells room to breathe again. To truly ease joint pain, you first have to understand the architecture of your joints. They're more like a living ecosystem than a mechanical hinge, and every part depends on the other. The cartilage, the synovial fluid, the bone underneath, even the surrounding muscles. When one element gets inflamed, everything around it feels the impact. Many people only treat the pain, but the real transformation happens when you start nurturing the environment those chondrocytes live in. That's where nutrition plays its subtle but powerful magic. Imagine trying to fix a house without understanding its foundation. That's exactly what happens when someone tries to reduce pain without learning what's actually going on inside the joint. Once you grasp how the tissue reacts to sugar spikes, processed foods, and chronic inflammation, you begin to see why healthy keto and fasting make such a dramatic difference. They remove the metabolic noise that keeps irritating the system. And with that clarity, we're ready to uncover what's happening even deeper inside the cell. Inside every chondrocyte, there's a tiny but powerful structure called the endoplasmic reticulum, the ER. Most people never hear about it, yet it quietly manages some of the most critical tasks for joint health. It folds proteins, stores calcium, and keeps cellular stress under control. But when the ER becomes overwhelmed, inflammation starts long before any mitochondrial damage shows up. That's one of the hidden reasons why nutrition, especially healthy keto and fasting, creates such a profound shift in how your joints feel day to day. When the ER is under stress, it's like an office where everyone is behind schedule. Mistakes pile up, signals get crossed, and the entire system becomes irritated. In chondrocytes, this irritation quickly turns into inflammation that spreads through the joint. You might not feel it immediately, but over time, stiffness, redness, and pain start showing up like overdue notices. And most people don't realize that sugar spikes, processed ingredients, and inflammatory oils make the ER work overtime just to keep up. What's fascinating is that once you start removing dietary triggers, the ER begins to recover, almost like dimming a noisy environment so the system can function smoothly again. Healthy keto naturally reduces the metabolic load on these cells, while fasting gives them periods of cellular rest. When that happens, inflammation drops, and the entire joint responds with surprising relief. And understanding this deeper layer of biology sets the stage for a discovery that even many doctors don't know about, something hidden right inside the chondrocyte itself. Here's where things get unexpectedly fascinating. Chondrocytes, those quiet cells inside your cartilage, actually have receptors for bile salts. It sounds strange at first. Why would a joint cell respond to something produced in the liver and modified in the gut? But this discovery opened a brand new understanding of how inflammation works. It also explains why the right nutrition choices, especially healthy keto, can shift your joint health much faster than people expect. The body communicates in ways we're only beginning to decode. There are two main types of bile: primary bile, produced in the liver, and secondary bile, produced by the gut microbes after they transform that primary bile. Think of primary bile as the raw material, and secondary bile as the upgraded version created by your microbiome, which is exactly why gut health plays such a massive role in arthritis. When your gut is thriving, especially with low sugar eating and intermittent fasting, it produces more of this powerful secondary bile. And here's the kicker. This secondary bile acts like a potent anti-inflammatory agent on those chondrocytes. It binds to their receptors and sends a message that essentially says, calm down, reduce stress, restore balance. This is one of the reasons people who shift to healthy keto notice their joints becoming less swollen and more mobile. When you support your gut, you support your bile. And when your bile is balanced, your joints finally start getting the signals they've been missing, which leads directly to a remarkable compound that takes this effect even further. 2-DCA is one of those compounds that feels almost like too good to be true until you understand how it works inside the cell. Because it directly reduces stress in the endoplasmic reticulum, it essentially helps the chondrocyte breathe again. When the ER relaxes, inflammation calms, proteins fold correctly, and the joint environment becomes far less reactive. It's one of the reasons many people notice smoother movement and less morning stiffness after supporting their nutrition with strategies like healthy keto and fasting. What makes 2-DCA particularly impressive is how it acts almost like a cellular bodyguard for your cartilage. Instead of just masking symptoms, it supports the underlying processes that keep the tissue strong, flexible, and well protected. When energy production is more efficient and metabolic stress is reduced, the chondrocyte finally has a chance to focus on repair instead of constant firefighting. And the combination of low-carb eating with natural bile support creates an environment where recovery becomes much more attainable. For those who like to dig deeper, this is where the journey gets exciting. Because 2-DCA doesn't just calm inflammation, it helps maintain the long-term resilience of the joint itself. For those who want to dive deeper, there are complementary resources with updated information on natural strategies and highly rated options for 2025. The link is right below in the video description. And with that foundation in place, we can now move into another critical piece of the puzzle, preventing one of the most overlooked contributors to joint damage. Vitamin K2 plays a surprisingly powerful role when it comes to joint health, yet most people barely hear about it. While K1 is famous for helping with blood clotting, K2 serves a completely different mission. It prevents calcium from settling in the wrong places. Without enough K2, calcium drifts into soft tissues, including your joints, where it creates stiffness, tiny bone spurs, and that gritty sensation many people describe. This is exactly where nutrition strategies like healthy keto start shining, because they naturally reduce the metabolic stress that contributes to these deposits. One of the biggest misunderstandings about joint pain is believing it's always wear and tear, when in reality, calcification plays a massive role. Those little spikes, osteophytes, often form because the body doesn't have enough K2 signaling calcium where to go. It's like having workers but no foreman. The minerals pile up wherever they land. And if someone has used warfarin, the situation becomes even more complicated because the medication blocks K1 but also ends up suppressing K2, accelerating these unwanted calcifications. When you combine a K2 deficiency with chronic inflammation and a high-carb diet,